So, good afternoon. Let us pray before we begin. Father in heaven, we thank you for this time that we're able to cook and show people healthy eating habits, healthy eating, and especially this day, we're doing gluten-free. So we pray that everything goes smoothly and people learn what is healthy to eat gluten-free. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So today, as you all know, I've already done a couple of these. I am Basil, and today we've invited Laurie, Pettey, and Jim Higgins here to cook with us today. And so what we're doing is we're doing pomegranate and cumin meatballs, and we're doing keta rice. So, but here, Laurie has a lot of experience in cooking, so we've asked her to just give a little introduction of herself and about what we're doing.
Good morning or afternoon. So, a little bit about my background. I am a lifetime vegetarian, and I've always enjoyed the cooking. I started with my grandmother in the kitchen and was inspired. My dad would make different things, and then my family got involved with the vegetarian restaurants, and I have really had the privilege of enjoying cooking for summer camp, a couple of different ones. So that's a little bit about my background, and I have been cooking here with the Seventh-day Adventist Church for quite some time. So as Basil was mentioning, we're going to be doing a recipe for the gluten-free. With the gluten-free, my husband needs to have gluten-free food. He was diagnosed as a baby, about a year and a half old, that he needed gluten-free food. So this is one of the entrees that has a nice balance between proteins and some rice, and then a little bit of onion, some seasonings, and we're going to top it with some pomegranates, and we'll have a barbecue sauce over it. And then the kata is a Persian rice. Both of these recipes are Persian inspired. So the rice, the kata, has a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of butter, saffron. So we'll have fun this morning.
Yeah. So first, what do you want us to do first? Well, I see that there's a lot of stuff out here on the countertop. Mm-hmm. That's already, some of it has been pre-majored, it looks like, and some of it is ready to major.
Right.
So what are we doing first? Are we doing the meatball first or the rice first?
Let's do the meatballs first.
Okay.
With the meatballs, we have for the recipe, and the recipe will be posted a little bit later. So with the rice, we need 3 cups of the cooked rice. Down there, Jim, if you'll measure out 3 cups of rice.
Sure.
And put that into the bowl.
So before we get started, I think it's important to note what we've already done.
Yeah.
Right. So we've already cooked how many cups of lentils?
Red lentils.
We've had 2 cups of red lentils to 5 cups of water, and they're already pre-cooked.
That's right. So that's the first thing we do. And so now, Laurie, tell me what you want me to add.
I would like the lentils here, and I would like the rice, and then we'll add our pre-cooked lentils as well to the rice.
Or the rice to the lentils?
Should I bring the lentils over here?
Yeah, bring the lentils
Yeah,
over
let me
here.
do that. That'll make it a lot easier.
So as you look, it is pre-cooked. And so he will be adding the rice to the pre-cooked lentils.
And when I cook the lentils, I do add about a tablespoon of olive oil. I like to keep some of those natural oils like olive oil. That's what I use most. So about a tablespoon of olive oil to that mixture when you cook the lentils.
Okay.
Okay, and then the rice as they stir it up. Now, with the breadcrumbs, Basil, will you have about
How many of these?
5 slices?
Five slices?
Yeah. And when you,
Now this is gluten-free bread.
this is gluten-free bread.
Now
I've-
Costco does carry gluten-free bread, so if you have a Costco nearby,
Yeah.
they can do that. But I'm sure any of the regular stores with gluten-free bread would be available at many of the stores.
Right. That will be nice. So
We're going
you
to cut
can-
these up.
You can cut them or tear them, and we'll need to put them into the food processor and make breadcrumbs. Now, these have already
Just try
been,
to tear it in
the
quarters.
pieces of gluten-free bread have already been toasted in the oven.
Yes.
You can toast them in your toaster, but it's better if you toast them in the oven because the gluten-free bread can be a little gummy, the texture, and so we want to dry them out just a little bit.
And Jim did mention that you only need to tear them into quarters. Because
Okay.
if you're going to put them in the food processor, that'll do the bulk of the work of making them into crumbs.
Okay, sounds good. And then, Jim, if you'll work on an onion, I put it in the basket there in front of you.
Okay.
We need the onion to be minced. Only about half of that,
Half the onion.
half the onion. We'll save the other half for our barbecue sauce.
And so you just want me to
Make
spin
them
this and
into-
make them crumbs.
Make them into crumbs. It will take a little bit because the bread has that certain type of gummy texture.
Now, for those of you who are like me, where onions really irritate your eyes, one of the reasons that that happens is because onions, when you're cutting them, they put off a chemical. I think it's sulfur dioxide. And so when that chemical connects with water, it converts to sulfuric acid. And so it gets in your eyes, and that's what's causing the stinging. So one way of getting around that stinging, or at least helping it, is to wet your knife and wet your cutting board. So that's what I'm going to do here at this point.
Is this crumb enough?
Yes, that looks very good.
And I'm going to show this in the picture here.
Just a second.
Oh, okay.
The battery ran out.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Now,
I'll come over this side. But this is what the crumbs should look like. Okay, good. So this I would put in my bowl.
Yes. So with the breadcrumbs, I want to let you know that depending on the gluten-free bread that you use, you want to toast it to dry it out a little bit, but they are going to vary a little bit. Some are already a little more dry. So make sure that it is toasted, and it's about 2 cups for this recipe. Okay. So the next thing that we'll want is a cup of the chopped walnuts right in front of you.
So what are we doing? The chopped walnuts?
Yes.
So I'm going to chop
in a bowl.
walnuts. How much walnuts am I supposed to chop?
1 cup.
1 cup?
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you want the walnuts to be on the video, but that bowl's gonna be in the pipe.
Yeah.
It's important when you're dicing these onions, you want them diced very small, because in your meatballs, you don't want them to, you don't want a person to bite into it and get a big chunk of onion. You want it to just be something that adds some flavor and texture without drawing too much attention to itself.
And when you chop the walnuts, you got to chop them a little different than you would chop, how you would guard. You got to kind of keep them in a pile so that the knife does chop through them. I've chopped walnuts for cottage cheese loaf, and it's the same deal. That you chop your walnuts by holding them in a row and keeping the knife a little bit away from your fingers.
Yeah, make sure that you curl the fingers back.
Yeah.
Keep that
I
away from the
can't
knife.
do that when I do this. But yeah, you're supposed to. You're supposed to have a claw holding your produce when you're doing major cuts.
Shall I add these to the mix?
We need to have not quite all of that, about 2/3 of that amount, Jim.
Okay.
And would you hand him
It goes
that?
into this mix.
That's okay. You can add that. That's a small enough amount in size, basil.
Yeah, but I don't want the big pieces, right?
Right.
That's what I'm trying
a
to do.
good-
Like this
good-looking
piece
size.
is okay, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
That-
so this
that
piece,
sounds- Yes.
if you can see it, is a little piece. That piece is big enough, small enough.
Right.
But I do have bigger pieces in here, so I'm trying to make sure everything gets close to uniform size.
All right, Laurie, should I stir the onions in?
Yes, and we'll need to stir in the breadcrumbs that basil have ready.
Thank you. You'll notice that we're fairly organized here in terms of with the way we've laid out our ingredients, and it's just sort of a little fun fact. There's a name for it among professional chefs, and it's called the mise en place. And
I've heard of that.
yes, it's about keeping your place in order, so that like when I just cut the onion, you clean it up so that you don't have a lot of clutter, and it enables you to both see what you need to do and make sure you haven't left any ingredients out.
Which I've done. When I first made red velvet cake in front of a crew teaching a class, I forgot to add something because I wasn't as organized as I've learned to become.
Yeah, I've learned a lot of this from Laurie, who has shared videos with me. They're very interesting videos on cooking, and I'm like your typical American. who is just really learning how to do all of this. Laurie, what should I do next?
Okay, so we're ready to add the polenta.
Okay.
With the polenta, you can use cornmeal.
How much polenta?
This
4
is
tablespoons.
4 tablespoons.
So adding 4 tablespoons of polenta.
So you can use cornmeal or polenta. I like the polenta because it gives a better texture to the meatballs. But everybody is a little different. They might like the meatballs to have a little smoother texture.
That's good, amazing.
So this goes in with the
Yes.
lentils?
Right. And the reason for the cornmeal in this is because the gluten-free bread, it will help to hold it together, but the cornmeal or polenta will hold it a little better together so that it doesn't crumble. One of the things with gluten-free foods is that they can crumble pretty easily. So we need to add a little other ingredients to compensate for that. Okay, so basil, we need half a cup of cilantro and half a cup of parsley.
So is this one cilantro?
Uh-huh.
And we
Yes.
have this right here.
Oh, we have that right there? So it's already chopped up.
Uh-huh.
What about the parsley?
It's a combination.
It's a combination?
I think we'll need a little bit more.
Okay.
So
This is where you use the claw.
and you can use a chiffonade type of technique.
Oh, that's right. I could roll them up.
Uh-huh. Roll them a little bit.
Is this enough, or do you need to think more? This looks like a quarter
that's-
cup.
That would be good. And then let's add a little more cilantro as well.
So Laurie, while he's doing that, should I take care of the plums and the eggs?
So one of the things that is interesting in this recipe is that they use dried plums. It gives it a little bit more of a rich taste, and it will pair well with the barbecue sauce, and it keeps the moisture. So as I said, that it will compensate for the other moisture ingredients and add just a little bit more so that we keep those meatballs together.
So what we have 4 plums.
Yes,
Right?
4
Dried plums. And the reason I was suggesting adding it now is as you can probably see, the mixture starts getting dry. And so we want to make sure that we can add the liquid in to kind of keep it moist enough to continue working with. And
Now, one of the techniques that Jim and I tried, it seems to work very well, is that we put it into a bullet type of blender, and with a couple of eggs. You don't need to use all the eggs. We're going to use 4 eggs altogether in our recipe, but we'll use 2 of them with the dried plums in order to blend that up nicely.
So I've added about another quarter cup of
Good.
cilantro.
Yes.
So
This really, the cilantro and parsley really gives a nice fresh flavor and helps with the texture as well. That looks good, Basil.
and are we going to add this to the mixture?
Yes, we can add that to the mixture.
So I've added it, Jim. So when you get back here,
thank you.
it'll need.
So you may be wondering why I'm washing the eggs. These are actually eggs from my chickens. And believe it or not, fresh eggs from your chickens, you don't have to refrigerate
No, you don't.
unless you wash them.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's a protective coating on there that's just from the way God
Nature.
made it.
Yeah.
And so we store these, and then now that, but before we use them, or even if we handle them with our hands, it's very important to wash them first.
You know, that's why, like, when you watch Downton Abbey on public television, they had the eggs in the kitchen just sitting on the counter because they don't wash them in England. All of England is that way. America, That's why you have to refrigerate them, because they do wash them at the farm. So we do have to refrigerate eggs because that protective coating is gone.
And it makes some sense because you know you can get salmonella from handling
Yeah.
unwashed eggs, so that kind of thing makes some sense. But anyway, that's why I was washing them.
You can put those.
I'm going to pour these
eggshells
over
in
the
there.
sink. So we've got 4 eggs and 4 dried plums that have been cut up just a little bit.
One fell on me.
Thank you,
So
sir.
we have our plums and our eggs all ready to go. We need the green onions.
The green onion,
They're right there in the basket.
and we're only using the green parts.
Right.
How many of these do we need to do?
8
All of them?
8 of them,
Okay.
which will probably be all of them.
Laurie, how much protein would you say is in a meal like this? Because it has beans,
Right.
rice, eggs.
The protein, since there has been recently out the documentary of the blue zones for people that live
Long
to
life.
100
Yeah.
years old, and it's really an interesting documentary. I would encourage everybody to watch it, whether they're wanting to have a gluten-free diet or just a healthy diet. And so they have found that about 10% of the protein is about all that humans can digest and assimilate, and that one of the countries, let's see, it was Puerto Rico? Costa Rica, sorry, that we had 3 sisters. We learned about that, which is beans, squash, and rice.
No, beans, corn, and rice.
Beans, corn, and rice. So that was one of the tips that, we need a little bit more of the vegetables. We need quite a bit in our daily diet. And with the beans, the corn, the squash, this type of idea where you have certainly the lentils, it's going to give you plenty of protein in this meal, and then the rice will give you the carbs.
That's an important point because you hear so often people say that if you're vegetarian, you can't get enough protein.
Right.
That is the propaganda of the meat industry.
Yeah, it is.
There is just as much protein in plant-based sources, even more so.
And the
than
body
meat.
absorbs it better.
Yep.
The body
Yep.
absorbs plant-based proteins a lot better than it does meat.
That's
But
right.
we're not trying to get you to quit meat. If you want to quit meat, this is like an interim recipe. Something that's similar, but a little different. So if you are trying to go vegetarian or vegan, this is like a stepping stone into that world.
Well, and even just as important, it's like most health experts, they may not advocate a vegetarian diet, but they say less meat is better.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, even if you're like, I don't want to be a vegetarian, if you can reduce the amount of meat you consume and replace the other protein from your diet with these plant-based sources, there's a whole lot of scientifically shown health benefits that accrue from that.
Nice.
Laurie, so
Okay.
we've got some other ingredients here.
Right.
Anything I should
So
add?
the next that we have the breadcrumbs, the rice, the onion, the lentils, the walnuts, the polenta. Now we're going to add chickpea flour.
So this is chickpea flour. How much?
we need to add, again, 4 tablespoons. And the chickpea flour will give us a beautiful texture. It will hold it together. And chickpeas or garbanzos is another source of protein. So you add in a little bit more protein into this recipe.
And see, garbanzo beans are used a lot in Indian recipes. This is not an Indian recipe, but it is an Eastern recipe, isn't
It's
it?
Persian,
It's Persian.
Persian inspired.
Yeah, a lot of those countries, you do use a lot of garbanzo beans or chickpeas as they're called too. So, and it is a healthy food.
And you can see how it is getting a lot thicker, which your typical meatball, you expect it to have some
Substance.
heft to it.
Yeah.
And
Hold
that's
together.
exactly what's happening.
Okay, so Jim, will you get the cumin? We need to roast it in a saute pan, and that's about 2 teaspoons. Now,
So this is 2 teaspoons of cumin.
when I roast any of the spices, want to turn on the heat. We have a gas stove here, so with roasting it, we have to warm up the pan. So we'll get that to a medium heat and let it warm up until you can put your hand down close to the pan and you can feel the heat. And then when that happens, then you can turn off the stove. You can put your cumin in there, just swirl the pan a little bit, shake it back and forth, whichever you would like to do, and that way toast the cumin and it will be very aromatic.
You know, Laurie, one of the things that you've taught me that kind of surprised me is I tend to always rush through my cooking, right? So I need to fry something, I just take some oil, stick it in a pan and turn on the fire. And Laurie has taught me that it's better to let the pan heat and then put in your oil.
Right.
And the same thing is true with in this case, where
Spices.
you're working with spices. Now, Laurie, why do you brown some spices, kind of like you're talking about?
Right. They bring out the flavors.
It makes the word is bloom.
Much better.
It blooms the flavor, right?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And as far as, like Jim was talking about, as far as the oil, if you will warm up your pan, if you take a minute or two to do that, then when you put whatever food is in there, it browns the outside and it doesn't just soak up all the oils. And then when you taste the food or take a bite of the food, it's not just a mouthful of hot oil. One of the with eggplant, it's especially very important to make sure that you warm up the oil, like we were saying, warm up the pan and then put the oil in, so that you don't get a mouthful of hot oil
In the food.
in the eggplant and
In the
just a
eggplant.
sponge of hot oil. So that's why I do it. Now this is dry roasting. We're not using any oil in this at all.
And you can see it starts changing color, it starts getting a little bit darker, and you can start smelling the aromatic fumes that come from it. It's stronger, but it's not like an overwhelming, it just changes it to something richer.
And basil, we need 2 tablespoons of dried tarragon.
Is that this one? Let's see. I don't see, there's tarragon. That would be this one.
Yep.
This one's tarragon, it's greenish.
And it's the dried. You can use fresh tarragon if you like that combination.
This just goes in as is.
That just goes in
And
as
how much
is.
did you say this was?
2 tablespoons.
2 tablespoons.
Yeah.
It looks a little small for 2 tablespoons.
2 teaspoons.
2 teaspoons.
Right.
Okay.
Now, tarragon is one of those spices that, like, when I've cooked for myself over the years, I mean, I'm one of those guys that I basically salt, pepper, maybe a little hot sauce, things like that. And so it's interesting the flavors that these additional spices like tarragon and coriander and all that they add, some really nice flavors.
One of the things with gluten-free food that you'll find, you're going to find a lot more recipes within the ethnic cultures, the Mexican food, the Persian food, East India, Thai, all those things. They don't have a lot of the gluten breads and that type of thing. So it's much easier if you go to some of those recipes. Okay, so we have the tarragon, we have the parsley and cilantro, our eggs, we have the green onions. We need a quarter of a teaspoon of cinnamon.
That would be this right here.
Okay.
Add, cinnamon's sort of a surprising flavor.
Move down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cinnamon is sort of a surprising flavor for something like this, but it's just enough to add a really nice aromatic flavor to it.
And cinnamon, even a little amount, helps with prediabetes and diabetes.
Yeah, that
Being
and
done
turmeric.
that-
huh?
It is, yeah.
Very important.
Cinnamon does help your blood sugar regulate your blood sugar. I know
So
because I use it myself.
we also need to have the 5 leaves of the sweet basil,
You want to cut
fresh
that up?
sweet basil.
Basil, cutting the basil?
Yeah. All of the
Nice
basil.
little chopped, yes.
Now
You don't
this,
have to
I'll
use the
cheffonade.
stems. Right.
No, I'm going to layer the leaves
Now, why do you do that, Basil?
because it makes it easier to cut. I don't have to worry about it. And you roll it up a little bit. That's cheffonading, and then you cut it.
You
And
know,
just-
you know what else that helps with?
What's that?
If you cut basil leaves just flat, again, something I've learned from Laurie, the oxidation of the leaves cause them to get darker much faster.
Yes.
yeah?
But by rolling it up like this and cutting it, believe it or not, it actually slows the oxidation process, so it keeps it actually fresher.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. So we need to add our red pepper flakes,
Okay. we
Jim.
got some red pepper flakes here.
And that's
How many of these?
1 teaspoon.
1 teaspoon.
And with this recipe, I try and look at maybe a couple of different recipes, 2 to 3, and take some of the ideas,
Are you ready?
some of the instructions in making these meatballs and personalize it just a little. So if you want a little bit more of the red pepper flakes or something like that, you can add them. So the other is 1 teaspoon of coriander. Is
1
ground.
teaspoon. This is that.
That's it.
This is coriander.
It's a ground coriander.
1 teaspoon.
Feel like you get your workout doing this.
Yeah, you do. You get that upper arm strength.
And 1 tablespoon of lime juice, which is down there by the,
This,
1 tablespoon.
yes.
that.
Now, when I do cooking, sometimes I overrun it, but we're going to be a little precise today. But lots
Okay.
of times I'll let it overflow just a little bit. Give it that little extra sometimes.
That's right. It's nothing wrong with that. Before we go any further, would you hand me those scissors that are herb scissors?
What kind of scissors are these?
They're herb cutting scissors. You can hold on to that. And one of my clients, just a delightful lady, Madeline, she gave me those. So take off the cover of those scissors and let's use them on the parsley or the cilantro.
We
Trevor.
did that already, I thought.
Just a
Well,
little bit.
we've just a little bit, so you can see the these shears. If you might hold them up for the camera, that will be. It's an interesting, and it makes it very easy. So if you're still, working on the chiffonade technique or your knife techniques, these are really fun.
I wonder where she got them.
Chef store somewhere.
Chef store, maybe like, well, they closed Bed Bath & Beyond. I bet you could have
Right.
got them there. But Chef store used to be called in our area Cash and Carry.
Right. And
So
then
Laura-
it's now U.S. Chef Store.
U.S. Chef
And
store.
So, Jim, we have 2 cups of shredded cheese. And with the cheese, because doesn't need to
Pardon,
be vegan. We can use some of the dairy products. And I find that the cheese, you want to use a shredded cheese, but choose whatever flavors that you like, that you can pair with. This is a mild combination, but it will hold those meatballs together.
How much did you
Very-
say?
2 cups.
2 cups. Really nicely held together with the cheese. And it gives, when you bite into it, it gives it a little bit of not only flavor, but again, the texture
Now
is
this
really
is
nice.
a Mexican blend,
Right.
but I'm sure you could use a cheddar or a Monterey Jack.
Right.
Something that's also can be sweet. Monterey Jack. I cook a couscous dish with Monterey Jack and ricotta. So I've not made that in a
Nice.
long while. I'll have to get that recipe out and do it in the near future.
So
Wait.
Laurie, what's the purpose of the cheese?
The cheese will hold this, the meatballs together. So we're going to bake them. You could deep fry them if you, put them into a nice firm pack and deep fry them. But we're going to bake them, makes it a little more healthy.
I think we're ready.
And yep, that seems to be something that just holds them. One of the things about the cheese, when you're choosing the cheese, make sure you don't choose something that is too strong of a flavor,
Yeah.
because it will overpower the other nice ingredients like coriander and cumin, things like that.
So you don't want to
Okay.
use a Gruyere.
Right.
Right.
That would be, it would change the entire flavor to something that would be overpowering. Okay, so we're ready to make the meatballs, and we'll show you a little bit. The ice cream scoop that has a lever on it is really helpful because that gets them out. You can, some people like to use a spoon and just shape them in their hands by themselves, whatever you would like to do.
So you get a pan, a cookie sheet. This is a smaller one, just as a sample, and you're kind of a medium-sized ice cream scoop. I did this once, and I had a monster-sized ice cream scoop. So it's like getting your meatball about the size of an apple, which is it was delicious, but probably a little bit bigger than many people would want. And so basically, you just take your scoop, kind of get rid of any excess here, drop it down.
It looks like a very nice texture. I like how you've stirred it up so that it's going to hold well together. And the fresh parsley and cilantro look really nice. They're going to give it a nice fresh flavor.
So, Laurie, the recipe that Basil and our wonderful technology cameraman is going to upload onto the website is the recipe we're following here.
Yes.
And how many servings? I mean, this is a fair amount of food.
That is.
This is probably enough for almost like a party that you might hold, right?
Right. And one of the things that is nice about this, it depends. There's, depends on your party, your family, if they want to eat 2 or if they eat 3, being men or women. And one of the nice things with this is you can make this into an appetizer size. You could have it on a fresh slice of tomato, serve it with a little bit of maybe a little more basil or something like that, and really nice little appetizer.
So, Laurie, how hot do you heat your oven for this?
So the oven is heated to 450.
Okay, so
Okay.
a preheated oven to 450 degrees. So we'll just pop this in here. And Laurie, how long do you cook it?
We cook it for 20 to 25 minutes, depending on your oven. And
Yeah.
this oven does really well. That we don't need to turn it around. It's not going to get too dark. And then you'll want to use a spatula a metal spatula to lift it off the pan.
Did you say we're going to rotate the pan while it's in the oven
No,
too?
don't need to.
Don't need to?
Don't need to on this one.
Because I know a lot of things they do need to.
Yes,
So while those are cooking, we actually made some earlier.
right.
And so this is the finished product. And so you'll notice it's wonderful texture and very flavorful. We
Yes.
ate some this morning already.
Yeah,
And
yeah, different. You know, they taste a little different than they do with a barbecue sauce.
which is
Yes.
an interesting point before Laurie talks about a barbecue sauce. There are two kinds of people in the world. There are
least.
saucers and unsaucers.
Yeah.
I tend to be a purist, and these things are so good that I can just eat them as they are. They're just the nuts and the cilantro and the parsley and all of that together. It's just so delicious. But there are those who are saucers.
Yeah.
And so, what do you
Oh,
guys
Jimmy.
recommend for it?
So the sauce that we're going to put is a barbecue sauce, and that one we have another half a cup of onions. Now we need to saute the onion. So Jim, would you
Absolutely.
saute that?
That's what this extra
Yes.
onion is
Yep.
for too.
Right.
Saute.
Should I use a bigger pan than this, or is this all right?
You can use a bigger pan.
bigger pan?
We want to saute the onion
Barbecue.
until it is, and this is diced onions. Saute it until it is golden. We're going to
What?
put it,
Till it's golden. The onion.
yes,
So once again, the
And-
idea is you heat the pan before you put the oil in.
right.
And we like to use a wooden spoon when we saute these, right?
Right.
Is there a reason for that, Laurie?
Well, it is. It doesn't bruise the onions as much. Any of the food, it's a little easier on the food.
How much oil do you put in? A
So-
tablespoon, a half a tablespoon?
No, it will depend on your family, how much you would like with oil. I put in a thin layer that covers the bottom of
Okay.
the pan.
So,
Because onions will soak up some oil,
yeah.
and that's why we want to heat the pan first, then add the oil, and then add the onions.
Because then it
So
crisps
that
them pretty quickly.
It crisps,
Like
yes.
closes it, yeah.
Right.
So it sounds like a tablespoon on a big frying pan would be plenty of oil.
It might be, but we just eyeball it. You
I
know?
would say probably 2 tablespoons.
2 tablespoons?
But just whatever pan you're going to be using needs a thin coat on the bottom.
Let me see how this is doing.
And we need to
A
have
little bit more.
1 cup of the cooked yellow split peas, Basil.
Cooked
that
yellow
we're
split-
cooking them already on
Yeah.
the stove.
And
so
how much? A cup?
yes,
Well, I'll get a different cup because it's a hot thing.
right.
These heavy cast iron pan or stainless steel pans take a little bit to heat up.
Right.
There we go. So you can see I'm kind of eyeballing it just to see if I can get like a thin layer on the whole bottom of the pan. I'll let that oil heat up for just a moment. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put the oil in and then I'll just drop a little piece of onion in to see how it's doing. You see it didn't just start sizzling right there, so I'm going to wait just a moment. I can see it now. It's starting to bubble around that one piece there.
We'll need a nice bowl.
Turn the heat down just a little bit.
Nice pan, Basil, for putting all these ingredients in, because we're gonna, as we finish this, the ingredients into the pan, we'll want to cook that down just a little bit.
So this goes in the same pan with the onions?
Yes.
But we wait till they're sauteed or no?
No, not that pan. We need a saucepan.
Oh,
How big?
that's quite good.
And you want these in here?
Yes.
And it goes back on the stove?
Let's not have it be on the stove yet because we're going to add some more
Okay.
ingredients to it. Now, we need the 2 cups of tomato paste.
2 cups?
Mm-hmm. And if you have another recipe for barbecue sauce that you like, that is just fine. This one is one of the Persian inspired recipes, and the tomato, we're going to add a little bit of fresh tomato to it as well, and so that will have lots of flavor and will pair well with the lentils and the rice. That looks good.
You know, one of the things I like about cooking like we're doing is, you know, in the old country, as they say, cooking was a social affair. It
Right.
wasn't just,
Yeah, it seemed
you know, one person in the kitchen cooking for the rest of the family. It was often many family members together, getting together and cooking. And I just feel like there's something healthy about
The social aspect of
yeah,
that.
about making something together that we can all enjoy.
And this goes in with the yellow
Yes.
lentils.
Right. Once again, we've added a little bit more protein by adding the yellow lentils to this sauce. And one of the things that I find that you can do, depending on what you like for the texture, is you can blend these in a blender so it's nice and smooth once we're all finished. Or you can use it as kind of a sauce without blending it, whichever your family prefers. Okay, then we'll need 2 cups of the vegetable broth. Now
Of the
with
vegetable broth.
but with vegetable broth, I use the Better Than bouillon often. It is found at Costco.
Well, they also have it at Winco, if
And
you have
the-
a Winco near you,
right.
but it's not this big of a jar.
Right.
It's a smaller jar, but it is available in regular grocery store.
And with that Better Than bouillon, want 2 heaping tablespoons of the bouillon paste to,
That one,
right, to 2 cups of water. And with this Better Than bouillon, my family likes it. We like the flavor. It is not overpowering. However, you can use, you know, another vegetable broth if you want. All right? How are the onions?
They're coming
Turning
along.
up.
They're getting
Okay.
there.
so you dissolve this Better Than bouillon into your. Now I bet you, if someone isn't available to get the better than bouillon, they could use a regular vegetable broth in a
Right.
box,
Right.
or in a can.
Yes. They certainly could. Now, before you, Basil, before you put that in, we need to add 1 tablespoon. This is a spicy barbecue sauce that one of our members made, Jody Perbat, and she made it quite spicy. So let's just use a tablespoon, nice tablespoon. With the tomato paste in there and the other yellow lentils or split peas, those flavors are kind of plain. So a good tablespoon or more of the spicy barbecue sauce will really have a nice flavor.
Liven it up.
Yes, it will.
Just a little bit of taste.
Yes.
As on one of the cooking shows I watch, they always say just a little bit of heat.
Right. And you can add, now, I have not eaten much in the way of black pepper, so I use cayenne in its place. When the recipe will call for black pepper, I'll just use cayenne. It gives it a little heat, and then it's easier on the stomach. Basil, you had a experience with black pepper that you had shared with me. I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, when I was younger,
sometimes
I would get
people
like
go through
vegetables, corn or green beans, and have a little bit of corn or green beans with my pepper. They would be black with the pepper. But I don't do that so much anymore.
No.
Not that it's bad for you or good for you. It's just that that's why I was raised. Pepper was very much in the food. Even now, when I bake or cook for my mom, she goes, "Where's the pepper?" So I have to make sure there's quite a bit of pepper in the food.
The black pepper can be very hard on people's stomach.
Yeah.
And the lining of the stomach. And so some of the diets and doctors, they don't recommend black pepper for their patients. And so the cayenne does not have that same effect.
Look how it's changed in the health industry, because when my mom was pregnant with me 60 some odd years ago, the doctor said no salt. And she said, "What am I going to do?" And the doctor said pepper. And so she got used to peppering everything.
Right.
So there's always pepper in here. Now this liquid goes into this pot.
Yes, and if the onions are ready, that
Put
can
them in
go
as
into
well.
the pot as well.
Okay.
Into that saute pan. We need 4 tablespoons of the lime juice.
4 tablespoons of the lime juice.
Those onions look and smell really wonderful.
That's amazing how little heat transforms onions into something just so aromatic and delicious.
Excellent. In making up this particular recipe for the barbecue sauce, one of the other ingredients that you can add is a little bit of brown sugar. You can add like a tablespoon of brown sugar if you like a little sweeter barbecue sauce. But we're going to have this barbecue sauce is a little more savory.
Yeah.
Which also means for diabetics, it's
Yes,
like you're not
that's
adding
right.
that extra sugar.
That's right. Also, we need 2 tablespoons of olive oil, Jim, into the saute pan.
Into this pan.
Yes. Now, I would like a tasting spoon behind you, Jim, for each one of us. Since there are no raw eggs or anything like that in there, once Basil gets this mixture stirred together, I would like a little taste for each one of us, and then we need to fine tune perhaps the flavor. If we need a little more salt, or if we need a little more cayenne, or a little more barbecue sauce, something like that. Okay.
I like it.
I think that we should add another tablespoon of barbecue sauce, and we need to add 1 more cup of water.
1 more cup.
Uh-huh. And let's whisk it together.
It has an afterbite to it.
Good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can't taste it.
My
Very-
palate is far
very
more
subtle.
refined. It's all that pepper.
All that pepper dulled mine. That's right. I think I might have to have spicy food. You know, I do. I know Galen, Laurie's husband, makes a terrific hot sauce for when we have haystacks, and I kind of miss it. It kind of burns you. You sweat. You sweat with it.
Joke. That looks nice. So let's put that basil onto the stove, and we'll put a low heat and let that cook for about 20 minutes.
And let it cook for about 20 minutes.
Yes, on a low heat.
We're going to go back to the meatballs and show that the sauce has been cooked up. And in Persia, you said they don't mix it up, even though they can
don't blend it. They don't blend it. They leave the yellow split peas just as basil, and just a little bit. And we can leave one for Jim since he is a purist.
Something like that.
One more.
Yes.
You can put one on the last one. Just leave one uncovered. Real good.
And then we have our pomegranates that we can, and what I've seen also used is not only pomegranates, but some of the nuts like pistachios are really nice, and you can serve it with mint. That's one of the things that
And you
with
spread
Persian
this over
food,
the top
And around
Uh-huh.
the plate.
and
but
around
not
the plate.
not on Jim's meatball.
Not on Jim's.
Right,
On the ones that have sauce on them.
right.
Now this dish is a little more fancy than what a lot of people do, but this is how they serve it in the Persian country, right?
Right.
This is a Persian dish, right?
Yes.
I wish I could have some of those pomegranates.
Oh yeah?
Because I had a liver transplant, I can't. Wow.
How's that look, Laurie?
That looks great.
This is
All
how
right.
it's supposed to be. Except for that one. That one's for the purists.
No, you could see how serving something like that
Yes.
on a holiday or something. I mean, that's something very special, isn't it?
Yes.
It's something that it screams you put the time in
Right.
to make something special.
And also you can have it on the weekend or an evening dinner, and you'll have a very balanced meal.
So this is
With that.
more of a main dish rather
It's
than a
main
side dish.
It's a main dish. That's right. And, you'll certainly get used to cooking that and putting all the ingredients together very quickly. And goes pretty quickly after you get accustomed to it.
Yep.